I never thought love could hurt like this. Not the kind of hurt that comes from arguments or misunderstandings, but the kind that reaches down into your bones, the kind that changes the way you breathe, the way you look at people, the way you trust. My name is Emily Carter, and a year ago, I did something that most people would call an act of love. I gave my husband my kidney. I thought I was giving him life. But what I didn't know was that I was giving away the last piece of myself. It all started 6 years ago when I met David at a friend's birthday dinner. He wasn't the kind of man who filled a room. He wasn't loud or flashy, but he had this quiet confidence about him. The way he listened when people spoke, the way he smiled like he already understood what you were about to say. I was 29, coming out of a bad relationship, and I remember thinking, maybe this is what real love feels like. Safe, simple, solid. We started dating a few weeks later. He'd bring me coffee at work, text me good morning every day, and pick me up when it rained so I wouldn't ruin my shoes. He made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. I told my sister once, I think I found the one. She laughed and said, "You always say that." But this time, I meant it. 2 years later, we got married in a small church with white lilies on the pews and a few of our closest friends and family. When I looked at him at the altar, he was crying. David never cried. That moment, it was everything I ever dreamed love could be. But real life has a funny way of sneaking in when you least expect it. Around our 4th anniversary, David started feeling sick. He'd get dizzy spells, felt tired all the time. At first, we blamed it on work. He was an accountant, and tax season was brutal. But when he fainted in the kitchen one morning, I knew something was wrong. The tests came back fast and cold. Kidney failure. Stage 4. I remember the doctor explaining it, his voice too calm for the words coming out of his mouth. David's kidneys were barely functioning. He'd need dialysis, and eventually a transplant. The days that followed were a blur of hospital rooms, medication schedules, and quiet nights sitting beside him while machines hummed in the background. He tried to stay strong, but I saw it in his eyes. The fear, the helplessness. Then came the talk about the transplant list. The doctor said it could take years to find a match. David just stared at the floor. I remember thinking, years? Years of this. Years of watching him hooked up to machines, fading away a little more each day. So I got tested. I didn't even tell him at first. I just did it. And when the nurse told me we were a match, I cried in my car for 10 minutes straight. It felt like fate, like the universe had handed me a way to save him. When I told David, he said no. He said he couldn't let me do that it was too dangerous, that he couldn't live knowing I'd risked my life for him. But love doesn't ask for logic. Love just does. I told him, if you were me, you'd do it too. And he looked at me, his eyes wet, and said, "You're right." The surgery was scheduled for early May. I'll never forget the night before. We lay in the hospital bed, our hands tangled together, the soft beep of machines echoing in the dark. He whispered, "I don't deserve you." And I whispered back, "You're my husband. You don't have to." The morning came. The nurses prepped us, IVES taped to our arms, smiles that tried to hide the tension. Before they rolled me away, David kissed my forehead and said, "You're my miracle." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The surgery went smoothly. The doctors said it was one of the cleanest transplants they'd done that year. When I woke up, I remember the first thing I asked was, "Is he okay?" They said yes. They said his body was responding beautifully. I smiled, even through the pain, because it was worth it. Every ache, every scar. It was all worth it to see him alive. For a few days, it felt like a dream. He held my hand, told me he loved me, promised we'd grow old together. And then, something changed. It started small. A text he'd turn away to answer. A sudden "I'm tired" when I tried to talk. Nurses would come in, and he'd smile for them in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. I tried to ignore it, told myself he was just recovering, that maybe the meds were making him distant. But a week after we got discharged, he was gone. I came home from a follow-up appointment to find his things missing. His clothes, his toothbrush, his laptop. Just gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "Emily, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Please don't hate me." That was it. No explanation. No goodbye. Just sorry. I called him, over and over, straight to voicemail. I texted, emailed, begged his friends to tell me where he was. No one would say. 2 days later, I found out. He was staying with someone else, a woman named Claire, a nurse from the hospital, the same nurse who had prepped him for surgery. I remember standing in my kitchen, reading the message from a mutual friend, my hands shaking so hard I dropped my phone. It hit the floor and cracked, but I didn't even notice. Because in that moment, something inside me cracked too. I gave him my kidney, my life, my trust, and he gave it to someone else. The weeks that followed were a fog. People kept telling me to move on, to let it go. But how do you move on from something like that? How do you move on when the person who betrayed you is still walking around with a piece of you inside them? Every time I thought of him, I'd feel this ache, not just emotional, but physical, like my body knew what he'd taken. Months went by. I didn't eat much. I barely slept. I started therapy, mostly because my sister begged me to. The first thing the therapist said was, "You survived something traumatic." I told her, I didn't survive. I just kept breathing. It took me almost a year to start feeling human again. I learned to drive past the hospital without crying. I started cooking for myself again. I even went back to the park where we used to walk. I sat on our old bench and watched strangers laugh, couples hold hands, children chase pigeons. And for the first time, I didn't feel jealous. I just felt tired. One day, I got a message, unknown number, just 2 words. "I'm sorry." It was him. After nearly a year of silence, I stared at the message for hours before replying. For what? He called me that night. His voice was quiet, shaky. He said he'd made a mistake, that Claire wasn't what he thought she was, that he'd been confused, overwhelmed, scared. He said he missed me, that he still loved me. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just listened. When he finished talking, I said, "You're walking around with my kidney, David. You don't get to say you love me." There was silence. Then he whispered, "I don't deserve forgiveness." I said, "Good, because you're not getting it." And I hung up. That night, I finally slept. Not because I was at peace, but because I was done. Done trying to understand. Done trying to fix something that was never mine to fix. People always say love is about giving, but no one tells you that sometimes giving too much can destroy you. I don't regret saving his life. I don't. But I do regret forgetting mine in the process. Now, when people ask about my scar, I just tell them it's from a lesson, a painful, beautiful, necessary lesson. Love shouldn't require you to lose yourself, and if it does, it's not love. Months later, I saw him again. Grocery store, aisle 7. He looked thinner, older. He froze when he saw me. I smiled, small, polite, walked right past him, and for the first time since that hospital bed, I felt whole. Because the truth is, he may still carry a part of me inside him, but I carry something stronger, the part that survived him.